The content you're about to hear may be graphic in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh, how I wonder what it's like to relax. See the sky down under. Hope my plans collapse. Oh, how I'm under the surface of my tears, falling down asunder the meaning of my years.
This is True Crime XS.
So we were setting this up so that we could do like Scamsgiving, and I actually called it Fraudsgiving when I was texting you about this, like much earlier in the year than people are listening to this. And then I realized that I had totally missed a boat on that, and it's actually Scamsgiving and then Black Fraud Day.
I was going to say Scamsgiving. So it's like if you celebrate Thanksgiving, or if you're in a different country and you celebrate some sort of Friendsgiving, you can share Scamsgiving and Black Fraud Day with your friends.
Exactly. So we picked up, we just, finished the first episode of this. And that was this interesting case where I think there's like some elements of it that are clearly fraud. And then there's some stuff that's like more maybe building a corporate empire and people aren't happy with it. It's always interesting to me when people sort of fake it till they make it.
Everybody has to do that to some extent.
Right. There's a reasonable amount of delusion that comes with success. And like, it's interesting because I think where I get like deep into the cases, first of all, is when what I would not be able to quantify as a reasonable amount because I don't know exactly what it is, but it crosses some lines into territory where it starts to break laws. And like, I know other corporations do that and
legit
right.
Corporations.
Yeah. Like corporations that end up making it big early and then later, like you and I were just sort of talking about all of this from the perspective of like how many really big deals, they could look like fraud in certain scenarios.
It's like a series of choices that are made, and it starts out on a good path, right?
Right.
We've got this plan. We're headed this way. So it's possible that some of these things that end up being like a scam or just a fraud, they don't start out that way. But as you're making decisions, eventually you get to a crossroads and the wrong decision is made, right?
100%.
And sometimes things aren't on that path, I will, honestly say. But sometimes when you're looking at the nuts and bolts of a situation, like we're going to talk about today a little bit, it's really hard to, like, it could have been legit if different decisions had been made at different points in time, right?
I think to a degree they could be. Like, I just think one of the hard parts for me, which I think there's two like serious questions I have. The first one is kind of like, was it ever going to be that legit? And this is one of like the cases, the situations we're going to talk about today in terms of Fraudsgiving or Black Fraud Day. They are hard for me to wrap my head around the numbers being real because I feel like they're exponentially more than the legit version would look like.
Well, I can say this. Anytime, and I feel like this came up in the other episode too, anytime in real life you find yourself dealing with someone who is calling themselves a billionaire, like
right.
touting that information, there's more than likely some sort of scam or fraud happening. People who are actual billionaires don't flaunt that most of the time in a professional setting, right? They're not.
They don't in a personal setting either, though.
Well, Yeah, I don't think so either. But like for the most part, and here's the other thing: in faking it until you make it, one of the classic things that would tell you someone's faking it, right, is that they're saying they're a billionaire.
Right. Or flaunting it in ways that like you're supposed to pick up on the billionaire part and ask them about it or whatever.
Right. And in a non-for-profit situation, like none of that stuff comes into play.
Right. And, I know several wealthy people over the years I've been either acquainted for, employed by, or close with. I knew they were wealthy because of my nosiness. And like there were some obvious signs that they were wealthy. That joke, like, I'm not going to tell you that I won the lottery, but there will be signs.
Right, exactly.
There were certain things that like I knew. I knew one person that I'm relatively certain has crossed into the billionaire threshold. They're on all those lists that like come out. And the reason I bring that up is it's usually pretty easy to track a billionaire from the perspective of like figuring out sort of where the money came from. Like with this person, I know that there was family money and then a successful business built from the family money. And like there were, older folks in the family who passed away. So the family money grew exponentially. And I was there when some of that was happening and I was watching how the wealth grew. These happen to be very modest and low key wealthy folks. So it was more difficult to tell what was happening with them. But never once did they go, I'm a blah millionaire or I'm a blah billionaire. We would get phone calls related to our connection to these folks. And those phone calls were almost always like some list that Forbes had sold to some other company. Right.
Forbes is exactly, I know maybe, and I don't even look at Forbes, but I know maybe 4 or 5 people that have been, or I don't know if they would be on it now or not, but I know people that have been, the top richest people. And I know, and I happen to know it because of a like completely different situation.
Right.
But like they would never tell you.
Yeah. Like it never really came up. Like there were moments when it's come up like in conversation with other people asking if I knew what I was involved with.
Yes, that's true. If somebody knows that you have a connection,
right,
they will say, "Did you see this person was on the list?" And that's what's happened to me. And I always shrug off those conversations, really.
Right. And it's not something outside of this, like you and I talking right now. I don't think you and I've ever talked about the different folks that we just happen to know are in that scenario.
It doesn't come up.
Right. So when I first saw this, I was like, why is everyone not covering this? And then like, I think it's been going on in terms of being aware of the story we're about to talk about. I think it's been about a year, but like realistically, the problems in this story has been the last 8 months. And once it started popping in the news, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because you don't see a lot of like pretty plainly awkward situations for people who have claimed to have like a lot of money. In this instance that we're about to start talking about, they have represented themselves in such a way that I'm not so sure that some of it is not like out and out fraud on its face potentially. But where we get to that, like I look at all of this and I have, questions, and I feel really comfortable bringing it up in a true crime podcast, particularly under the heading Black Frauds Day, is when I look at this scenario, other people were harmed. And anytime people who just think they're working a job or are providing a service to whatever corporation has held itself out, potentially had to go through a credit check or background check or put down deposits, and they're not holding up their end of the bargain, and small businesses suffer, or people who think they're an administrative assistant, or they think that they are some type of project manager. In this instance, there are camp directors and people who are counseling children. Like when that happens, they've crossed the line where I don't consider them to be somebody who's faking it till they make it or on the right side of reasonable delusion. I consider them to be harming the community.
100,000,000%. And that's mainly why I was drawn to this case, because we were watching, I wasn't watching it like a year ago, but shortly thereafter, because it's been kind of this ongoing, like, this is what's happening. And then finally, law enforcement was investigating and then doing something about it, right?
Right. And so where it popped for me first, and the reason I brought up the year ago thing, is because sometimes, like, corporations, like, doing something good in the community, when they pop up, they're supporting political candidates. And that was what caught my attention first. There's a very small town that's close to all of this, and I have some people there that I know, and they had mentioned this to me over a year ago, that there was a candidate running in one of their local races, their political races, who was heavily tied to this organization, and they were being funded by this organization. And could I look into a couple of names just to make sure that some of the officials in the town weren't being bamboozled? And the results of all of that, they essentially felt like they were being bamboozled. So, like, it's not like people haven't been on notice. But where I'm going to start the story, that's going to come up as we talk, but where I'm going to start this story is, this is out of ABC 11, which is, it used to be WTVD.com out of the Raleigh-Durham area. I was sent a link when I started asking about this story and kind of seeing who I knew that might be involved. I was sent a link to a local news article by a woman named Diane Wilson, who functions as a troubleshooter for ABC 11. The article just says, summer camp accused of not paying the Chicken Hut in Durham for $4,000 in meals. And it comes with an interview and sound clips. The byline is in Durham, North Carolina. It says, a Durham summer camp is allegedly not paying its bills, and a popular Durham restaurant known for helping out the community is one of the vendors waiting to be paid. The Chicken Hut is owed $3,400, and the organization that didn't pay them, that it's admitted they owe them money, blames the delay on how their funds are distributed. So the organization that we're going to be talking about today is at first called the CJF America. So CJF America said that they're going to make full payment to this little local restaurant, the Chicken Hut. It's going to be made on Wednesday, July 30th. And the owner of the Chicken Hut tells WTVD or ABC that they told him it would be by 4 o'clock. But when they were waiting for this payment, it doesn't happen. So ABC 11 ends up reaching out to this CJF America and doesn't hear back. Trey Tapp is the owner of the Chicken Hut in Durham, North Carolina. He says that CJF America asked him to provide meals to their children who are attending summer camp. And so basically, he takes on this contract to provide meals for 125 kids for breakfast and 125 kids for lunch every day. The Chicken Hut has signed this contract with what's known as CJF Summer Camp, which is like part of the umbrella that is CJF America. And this is for meals at the Durham location. This is a camp that's being provided for free for families. And CJF says that it offers this space for youth in underserved neighborhoods. Now, the first week of camp is June 23rd. They do their job. Chicken Hut provides all the meals. According to Trey Tapp, he says, we bought our food, our supplies. He said, I paid my staff to prepare it. My staff would get it all together in the morning, and at 6 a.m., they would bring the food over, and the food is ready. Breakfast is delivered by 8 a.m., and at the end of the week, the contract says Chicken Hut is supposed to get paid. The invoice for the 250 meals is $3,437.50. But Trey Tapp says he didn't get his money. So they promised that every week there'd be a payment made, but according to Trey Tapp, those promises have been broken. So the contact person who we're supposed to be in contact with regarding all of this, TraTap starts emailing them and calling them and texting them, and there's no response. So the Chicken Hut reaches out to Diane Wilson. She gets in touch with CJF America. CJF America is also based in the Triangle area of North Carolina, which is Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. It states on their website that this is a vital arm of what's known as the Courtney Jordan Foundation. On the website, it states its mission is building stronger communities. And TraTap says that after Troubleshooter contacted CJF, the payment was promised again. And once again, it was the same story we've been hearing for over a month. Now, this time, Troubleshooter reaches out and says, hey, we poked you on this. You guys said you were going to pay it. What happened? So the president, a woman named Kristen Picot, P-I-C-O-T, sends an email and says at CJF America, we deeply value our partnerships with local businesses and recognize the vital role that vendors like the Chicken Hut play in helping to serve families across Durham. We understand the concerns shared. We wanted to be clear in both our acknowledgement and in intent. Over the past several weeks, CJF America has experienced a significant but temporary disruption in the internal mechanisms that govern how funds are dispersed across our network. This has affected several key partners, including vendors, utility providers, and members of our staff. In the course of scaling our operations to meet high demand, internal processes have experienced unforeseen delays. We regret any impact this has caused. CJF America has remained in communication with the Chicken Hut throughout this process. We recognize that during a period of internal adjustment, messaging may not have been consistent across all points of contact. We take responsibility for any confusion this has caused and are working to ensure clarity moving forward. To be clear, CJF America fully intends to honor all of our outstanding commitments. The Chicken Hut is scheduled to receive payment in full Wednesday, July 30th, 2025. In accordance with our updated disbursement plan, our team has prioritized their invoice to ensure resolution by that date. We are grateful for the patience and professionalism many in our community have shown as we work diligently to solve this disruption. Despite the challenges, our free summer camp programming has continued to operate, offering a stable, enriching space for youth in underserved neighborhoods. We remain committed to fulfilling every obligation with integrity, transparency. Our mission is to provide access, equity, and opportunity to underserved communities. Relies on trusted relationships, and we look forward to continuing that work. With full alignment and accountability, please don't hesitate to reach out should you need further documentation or clarification. That's their statement.
Blah, blah, blah.
TraTap says he's hoping CJF America comes through on the commitments to pay them. He says, I have to pay everything up front, so I have to pay my staff up front. So all of this has already come out of pocket. And it says that ABC 11 Troubleshooter and ABC News will keep you updated. As CJF America says, the Chicken Hut will be paid on July 30th. Besides this restaurant, Wilson is hearing from CJF America employees and summer camp workers who say they have not even been paid for any of their work, claiming they're owed thousands of dollars and even have been provided checks that can't be cashed due to insufficient funds. Okay, so that's where I go from passive interest to active interest.
Sure. And part of the background, the Chicken Hut it's a fixture there in that community, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
And part of the sort of the background there, you were talking about TraTap, who reached out for help, right, to get some exposure onto it. He's the owner, and he takes the community seriously into consideration. And there were some news, some press in probably just locally to Durham there when the pandemic happened and the restaurant had to shut down like every other restaurant did. They were providing food for children in the community who didn't otherwise have food, right?
Right.
I'm not sure how many people realize a lot of times in different communities, I'm sure across the United States, most elementary schools, at least, they have a free lunch program. And it's not like when we were in school, like it's a everybody eats type situation. And they
Correct.
provide it to children because research and studies were showing that sometimes that breakfast and lunch that kids got at school, that was the only thing they got to eat. And when schools shut down on March 15th, 2020, there was no backup plan to get children food, right?
Correct.
And that caused a huge, I know that in certain places it affected the community more than others, right?
Yes.
And it's not the case for everybody, but I do remember when my son was in elementary school a long, long time ago, there were children who they simply didn't have food at home for whatever reason.
Right.
And it was heartbreaking. And, we had the parent organization try and help that situation. But there has been press on the Chicken Hut and Trey Tapp stepping up. In that case, he wasn't just feeding the children, he was feeding the whole community. And he was giving away meals for people who needed food because of the way the pandemic sort of hit, right?
Right.
And they, for more than 20 years in the community, the Chicken Hut had partnered with the Healthy Start Academy, which is one of North Carolina's first tuition-free public charter schools.
Correct.
So they were giving from like 500 to 900 meals a week to that school and that program for 20 years. And so I don't know what the perception of is like, oh, they owed them $3,400, but they had a contract agreement, right? And like Tapp was saying, he put the money out. And I'm just going to take a guess here. He looks like a very smart and like kind man. I imagine that $3,400 was about the margin of their profit, right? That would be my guess. I don't know. What I mean is operating, right?
Right.
So
you're saying he wouldn't have overcharged the camp to begin with much.
Well,
he's covering himself.
I'm saying that he's giving them a deal, but also I'm saying that like based on how much they give away and stuff, I'm saying that it can make a huge difference when they don't get a $4,000 invoice paid.
Right.
Because this kind of place, it's a small profit margin to begin with, but it actually makes the business start hurting, right? Because it's not like they are, restaurants, especially this type of restaurant, they run on like a shoestring margin to begin with. It's so tight. And it looks like he gives all of that back to the community, and they had an agreement. And so he wasn't planning on going the whole summer without that extra money. And if he's budgeted, which I imagine he has because he appears to be a very smart, responsible businessman, right?
Right.
He's probably going, oh, if I don't get that money, what am I going to do? Because then you've got to go to the bank and you've got to get a loan, or you've got like, the bills don't stop coming just because this summer camp didn't pay the invoice.
Right.
And it really, I can tell he probably didn't want this any more than anybody else at the foundation wanted it. He didn't want to have to go to the media and say, y'all didn't pay me. He had no choice, right?
Right. Just pointing out what you're saying for a second. I think you do significant damage to a community when you start messing with the people supporting the community.
100%. That was $3,400 worth of like whatever, jobs, meals, whatever he was going to use it for. There was a contractual agreement in place. And keeping in mind the foundation behind the summer camp for children, for underserved children, he touts being a billionaire.
Correct.
And they signed a contract. I mean, it's different if you sign up for a handout, but that's not what happened here. It was signed up for, we're going to pay you. He held up his end of the bargain. And so I'm sure, mind-bogglingly disappointing, right? To see this like billionaire enterprise foundation not paying your tiny little bill.
Right. And it's like, just sort of like basic math on this. I'm just going to throw it out as an example. I'm not saying this is specifically what it is, but $3,400, if you were to sit down and go, okay, these kids are coming for 5 days. They're getting 2 meals a day. That's 250 meals a day because we've got 125 kids. That's going to be $3 a meal or a little less that he is.
Right.
Like, just to give you an idea of like what he's charging them. Now, he is providing this in bulk, and like there's a lot that goes on when you're catering, but that's not a lot of money that he's charging them to begin with.
He didn't make probably hardly anything off of this, but see, the electricity had already been used. The workers who prepared the meals and put them in the boxes and delivered them, they had already done their work and he had already paid them, right?
Yeah, and he's paying for the product, and the product's already gone on its way.
Exactly. And so it's a whole thing, and you count on that. And yeah, I guarantee you, like, it's under $3 a meal per kid. Like, I mean, it was very kind of him, right?
Right. Well, so I wanted to go back through, and I started digging into the whole concept of the CJF America to see how far back it actually went. And I pulled an article from the Chatham News Record, which is a local paper to Chatham County, North Carolina, deals with Pittsboro, Siler City. And this article is actually from May of 2022. The headline of the article, written by Bill Horner III, who's the publisher for Chatham News and Record at the time, it says, a hostile takeover or plan for Siler City's prosperity. And then the subtitle is, quote, unity, end quote, block, pledges prosperity but raises red flags for some. The article goes like this. Even in the often upside-down world of local politics, it's clear that Siler City's 2021 municipal elections would be particularly unusual. Now that they're finally happening, although spring of 2022, after COVID-impacted census data collection delayed it, the races have turned especially odd. The Stranger Things-esque plotline feature 4 newcomers to Siler City running as a block, making sometimes outlandish charges against the town's current Board of Commissioners. They've also made audacious pledges to bring prosperity to the town, including a $100 million privately funded affordable housing loan, a promise to cap costs for residents who rent apartments or homes, and a plan to revitalize healthcare here by bringing 2 urgent care centers to Siler City and, quote, 7 or 8, end quote, clinics from Duke University Health System. And that was even before Saturday's online revelation on the candidates' Unity 22 website at unity22.org of a list of more than 70 additional proposals addressing community prosperity, inclusivity, sustainability, public safety, and housing access for Siler City. The group, mayoral candidate Nick Gallardo, Gallardo, and town commissioner candidates Dean Peacock II, Jared Peacock, and Samuel Williams are all new to Siler City. Now, Dean Peacock and Jared Peacock share a last name, P-I-C-O-T. If you recognize that name, it's because the person that responded to the chicken hut was named Kristen Peacock, P-I-C-O-T. All 4 of these people have registered to vote in Chatham County over the past winter for the first time. So in 2021 into 2022, they registered to vote in Chatham County. They don't say how they're going to pay for their proposals or provide much detail or how they'll execute them. Their sudden appearance with bold pronouncements and vague hints about malfeasance occurring within the town's board have raised red flags with locals. But it gets stranger. A new Save Our Siler Facebook page created by a group of local residents in response to the Unity ticket drew a number of concerned comments over the weekend before it was taken down sometime Sunday for violating the social media site community guidelines for content. One of the page's creators says community members worry about a hostile takeover of Siler City. One of the Unity candidates later took credit for having the page removed from Facebook. The page goes up and down several times. They don't mention that all of that here, but the publisher seems to be aware that some kind of social media battle heading up here. So then they've got a little bullet list for us. It says, a video made during an April 24th candidate forum at First Missionary Baptist Church, where the 4 spoke, has been removed from the video sharing platform YouTube, likely related to complaints from Unity candidates. During the forum, Dean Peacock II suggested Siler City's current elected board was telling, quote, lies, 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 among other factual claims. it says an exchange on the social media platform Nextdoor between a Siler City resident and one of the candidates resulted in accusations of, quote, borderline slander, and with the candidate in question saying the town's leadership have not for decades lived up to the vision that this beautiful town was created on. Competing, perhaps warring Twitter sites, the Unity blocks Save Siler. The profile reads, Save Siler City from the tyranny of a neglectful ruling class, while a Save Our Siler, which is at Our Siler as opposed to Save Siler, which was created first, was being promoted as a concerned group of Siler City residents to expose a self-appointed billionaire's quest to take over our town. On Monday night, following Siler City's Board of Commissioners meeting, the group's apparent patron, Courtney Jordan, who is a Durham resident touted as a billionaire entrepreneur, was involved in a shouting match with candidate James J. Underwood. The encounter drew the attention of Siler City Police Chief Mike Wagner, who had attended the meeting and called for support from his staff as Jordan and Underwood argued outside Wren Memorial Library where the meeting was held. No charges were filed, but it added another bizarre layer to the town's municipal election, which will be held May 17th as part of the state's primary election cycle. Okay, so that's like 3 years ago when this is happening. But it's weird. So we've got this guy who can't pay the chicken hut, who 3 years earlier was trying to take over sort of a neighboring town. Now, Durham, where Courtney Jordan is located, would be almost impossible to take over. Durham is a highly political town, and it's a highly progressive town, and it would stand for no money, real or fake. It has its own corruption and malfeasance problems. So they go to this place, Siler City, which, if those of you who don't know anything about North Carolina, Meg and I have spent many years in and around North Carolina, and I will just tell you that Siler City is essentially a central North Carolina town that mimics Mayberry from the old Andy Griffith television show. It's very small, and I bring this up to say it is very strange to go into an area like this and to try and take over. But they're not the only ones doing it. Pittsburgh, Siler City, they have been the target of the likes of even Disney. Disney has a huge development plan down in that area. It's considered to be prime real estate. It is very central to transportation hubs in North Carolina and a lot of industry. It's sort of a bedroom community for the outlying suburbs of Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, those suburbs being towns like Apex and Holly Springs and Hillsborough. But, you know, it's 20 minutes removed from that in terms of drive time, but they were trying to take it over.
Right. And just to sort of give some, I don't know, geographical clarity, most people know where like Raleigh-Durham the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina is. And then you would know probably where like the Piedmont Triad, which is like Greensboro and Winston-Salem. And so in between those two areas is Burlington. And Siler City is directly south of Burlington.
Correct.
And so it's, I think that you're right, that it's not the only community that is ripe for the picking. I hate to even say that. But it's a convenient target, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the town's population in 2020 was 7,702, and so that's a small town. It's not 200 people, but like most of the bedroom communities in, I would say probably most states, but in North Carolina for sure. I mean, a bedroom community is typically like 25,000 people, right?
Right. And this area is going to be growing over the next couple of years simply because of the housing developments that are going on there. They have anticipated this growth. Up until that point, it was a relatively affordable place to live. And I don't think this is a terrible description of a town. These places are simple. Like, it's not complex to live there. They don't have super high crime rates. It's not really expensive to live there.
And it's close enough that you can get a job in one of the more major cities.
Right. You can get a job in a city and you have a relatively, palatable commute, and you can go make your money, bring that money back to this area. That's a common thing living in these areas. So these candidates, first of all, the candidates having multiple people with the last name in common with someone from the Courtney Jordan Foundation is interesting.
Well, clearly, those people are all related. They have to be.
They are, yeah. They don't answer the questions really up front. And this guy gives us a little bit of a breakdown of these four, just so we have an idea of who they are. Nick is from Texas. He says he was raised in Raleigh. He's the mayoral candidate. He was on the ballot to replace the late John Grimes, who was a beloved local businessman who died in office in October 2020. His seat was never filled. He was seeking office along with a sitting at-large commissioner, I think it's a county commissioner there, named Thomas Price III, who goes by Chip, and a local pastor named Donald Matthews. The Peacocks, Dean Jr. and Jared, who are related but apparently not brothers, they were seeking the at-large and District 5 seats, respectively. It says that Dean Peacock is a substance abuse counselor who's facing off with Jay Underwood, who had the row with Jordan. This Courtney Jordan, the guy that's supposedly behind the funding here, and an incumbent named Cindy Bray, Jared Peacock, who says that he is also an entrepreneur. He's facing District 5 incumbent Louis Fadley and Rayetta Fox. Sam Williams is a New York native and a pastor, and he's a self-described, quote, hospital manager. He was facing a man named Albert Alston. So it's interesting that these guys are all running for this at the same time and kind of banding together. I think it's a bad sign for everybody involved here.
It's a PR nightmare. I'm not sure what they were thinking.
Right.
It is for one thing, it would be bad to be a candidate coming into a situation with Save Siler City, when you've got people who very clearly do not see why there is a need to save Siler City living there, right?
Right.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with it in their eyes. And to multiply that by 4. And I think a hostile takeover is a good description of what they were trying to do.
Right. Well, just so everybody's aware, none of this ends up working.
Of course not.
This is all just,
And I could have, of course, this is in the past that we're looking at it, right? So there's no anticipation, is it going to work? But even just looking at their smiling faces, they're up to something.
Right. And pretty much what they ended up doing was guaranteeing that the opposite candidate was going to win. And sometimes that's a thing that people do. I can't imagine that's a thing that you do in this scenario.
No, they very clearly were going to present bonds and try and raise money that they would have control of. That's what I see happening there. Of course, it didn't end up happening, but it's all a financial ruse.
Oh, absolutely. So I started wondering when, digging through all of this, who actually is Courtney Jordan?
Because he ultimately appears to be behind this.
Yeah, he seems to be the person that's either been chosen the figurehead or has decided, in some way, shape, or foundation, he's in charge here. His website is still up. You can go check this out. If you pull it up, it's the CourtneyJordanFoundation.org. And it says, what's important are branches. And it says they have CJF America, CJF Bangladesh, and CJF Sri Lanka. So immediately giving me international vibes, but also simultaneously giving me sweatshop vibes.
Do you wonder why those foundation, you don't necessarily need a foundation in Durham, North Carolina that would be on par with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka?
No.
It's strange, right?
It's all strange.
Okay.
It's very strange. Unnecessary is a good word to kind of describe what they're touting here. If you drill down, you can find out more about their leadership. It says they're led by Courtney Jordan. It says he's the executive chairman. And as the executive chairman of the Courtney Jordan Foundation, Mr. Jordan shapes and approves the foundation's strategies, advocates for global issues, directs its mission to address the world's most pressing challenges, including poverty, by dedicating 82% of his net worth to sustainable solutions. And it says that I can learn more if I want to go over to CourtneyJordan.org. So for the moment, when I flipped over to there, it basically is a website called Courtney Jordan Giving. It says born in May of 1988, Courtney Jordan is an accomplished entrepreneur who has transitioned into one of the most influential philanthropists of his generation, known for his work in empowering communities, fostering global entrepreneurship, and promoting sustainable development. Courtney's life story is a testament to resilience, transformation, and the power of giving back. Fluent in 7 languages, including English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, Arabic, and Mandarin, he has built bridges across cultures, allowing him to lead with a deep understanding of diverse global needs. Courtney's journey is one of reinvention, driven by both his personal hardships and his commitment to social change. Once focused solely on business success, Courtney shifted his priorities after experiencing profound emotional, spiritual, and professional challenges. Today, his legacy is one of empowerment, having committed his life to fostering entrepreneurship, creating lasting, sustainable impact through the foundation, the Courtney Jordan Foundation. It goes on below where you can click on links about entrepreneurship, arts, food, and housing security. The only thing I can tell about Courtney Jordan from reading all of this is that he's probably telling us the truth within the lie, because I think most of this is a lie. He does appear to have had like some minor successes in business that have netted a little bit of money. The billionaire thing is, there's a lot of really fancy writing here, but ultimately, like, this fancy writing is not real. So looking at it from the perspective of like, what has Courtney Jordan done? As far as I can tell, basically nothing.
Right. And along with his accolades, all of these things that sort of branch off into other things that have like his name in it, which is weird. Courtney Jordan, like, he is addressing the world's most pressing challenges, including poverty, by dedicating 82% of his net worth to sustainable solutions. That's one of his goals, right?
Right.
And I was like, it's interesting that they settled on this 82% mark, right?
He's untaxable? Is that his idea?
No, I don't know. But like 82%. So if he's worth $1, he's going to give 82 cents, right? There is absolutely nothing about that indicates it's a lot of money.
Correct. Like, they're very careful with language. I've noticed the one thing he's done that seems successful is built a lot of websites that say very little but have extremely psychologically powerful, meaningless language.
Right. If you see it in a glancing type, like just in passing, like this guy doesn't show up on the radar at all, right?
Right.
I mean, whatever. It's weird when you're like, all I can think is maybe legacy, like he's trying to build some sort of legacy, but it's weird. Courtney Jordan Foundation, Courtney Jordan Giving, real philanthropists, for one thing, their name is usually not all over something unless somebody else started it, right?
Right, yeah.
But he started all these, and, you don't need, it costs money to have a structure for a profit company or a not-for-profit company. And even the expenses of just having these websites like kind of branch off into each other. If you're really looking for a sustainable way to do whatever your mission is, you don't need 15 foundations to do it.
Right. You don't at all. And it only gets weirder. I'm just going to thumb through this part so that I can set up like where we're headed with all of this. It lists Dietrich Howell as their spokesperson and communication strategist. He says as foundation spokesperson and communication strategist, he leads global messaging and public engagement, shaping the foundation's voice, amplifying its mission to drive lasting change. And And then it has kind of a standard but a little overfull description of the rest of the leadership. There's a woman named Dr. Mackenzie Robinson, who's listed as the CEO and board member. A guy named Alexei Vanovich, who goes by Blaine, who's a CFO and a board member. Sebastian Eyrich, he's listed as a chief legal officer and corporate secretary, which is an interesting choice of titling. We have Noah Birch as the chief operating officer and executive director of the foundation. Stephen Dennis as president and head of global development. We have Liam Kincaid as president and global growth and opportunity, whatever that means, president of global growth and opportunity. We have Davis Whitney, who's a chief strategy officer. Kristen Peacock, who we've already mentioned, as the president of the North American operations of CJF America. And then we have Dr. Mahmoudul Hassan as the president of the Bangladesh operations of CJF Bangladesh. We have Aruna Pereira as the president of Sri Lankan operations at CJF Sri Lanka, and Maria Lord Santos as the president of the. We have Maria Lord Santos as the president of the Philippines operations, or CGF Philippines. Dr. Rajesh Sharma as the president of India operations at CJF India. And all of these things, have colorful language mixed in from their native tongues. They all talk about this organization called NEYIUS, Neyius. They all have their own individual websites for each thing going on here. And it points out that, there's these foundations and this fund that's being managed. According to this, the CFO is the chief financial officer of NEYIUS, whatever that word is.
That's a fun thing to look up if you need a rabbit hole.
Oh, well, it's set up here with its own websites. It looks like they are just another part of the insanity that is all of this.
Well, it's really funny because how deep does this go, right?
Right. All these people appear to be represented as being involved. If you go digging deep into any of them, you will find almost nothing. They all seem to be people who are on the track to call themselves a billionaire one day. Some of them appear to be self-published authors and self-represented public speakers.
Sure. And they are faking it till they may possibly make it.
Yeah, even in social media, they have, the requisite 50 followers, some of them slightly more.
I have about 100 people on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
They're all the same people.
Right. And
they all revolve around this whole pyramid here.
Yeah. And so I wanted to get back to the chicken hut thing for a minute. So the first thing that pops up, in case you guys are following this elsewhere, you can find a couple of different articles about this at this point. But I've kind of organized them, and I'm going to walk you through what's going on there. So same place as earlier, ABC 11, we find out that Kristen Peacock is charged with a couple of criminal counts of simple worthless checks. So those misdemeanor charges were filed by a woman known as Crystal Graves. According to what's being pulled up here, she's a former executive director of the Durham Courtney Jordan Foundation office who was hired by CJF America in May. She claims that she never received wages for the work she had already done. According to a previous article where they talked to CJF America employees back in August, that article, also by Diane Wilson, joined by Isabel Dietrich, it said camp counselors, employees at CJF America say they showed up for work, but their pay is a no-show. So new details emerged in an ABC troubleshooter investigation into triangle-based organization CJF America, a branch of the Courtney Jordan Foundation. Employees of CJF America and camp counselors of the foundation's summer camp are claiming they have not been paid for their work. Diane Wilson first told you about payment with CJF America
not paying the Chicken Hut restaurant. And according to this, in August, they still had not been paid. Employees of CJF America tell Diane Wilson they're still awaiting payment. Also, Dr. Cherise Collins and Crystal Graves were both offered high-paying positions at CJF America, started their jobs in May. At first, everything was great. Dr. Collins and Graves both were passionate about helping underserved communities, thought this was a perfect fit. The organization was to serve underserved communities, to develop smart hubs, community centers, along with free summer camps during the summer. This is according to Dr. Collins, who was hired as an assistant vice president and regional director for the North Carolina region. Graves is a community activist in Durham, was hired as the executive director of the Durham office. She says, I got a call from Courtney Jordan himself. When she came on board as an employee, she took her role seriously. If I can work for this company and my community, get what they need, then it's a win for me because nobody else is going to do this. And we need help, especially within Durham Housing Authority. We need help. A key part of Graves' role was to include recruiting families to enroll their children in the CJF summer camp. We only had 50 applications when I started. When I finished, we had approximately 300 applications. I want my community to benefit from this. He promised all these field trips. He promised all this academic help for kids with autism. None of the activities that the staff put together, beautiful programming for the kids. I mean, we had it all laid out. We were excited. We were on board. And that's when we realized something was very wrong. She says CJF America or Courtney Jordan provided the funding for all the promised activities for the kids, or even basics like tables and chairs. So I think what they mean to say is that he didn't provide that funding. Graves says she felt that she let down Durham community. It was a lot of pressure on me because I'm utilizing resources that I know. I started and set up the whole camp thinking he was going to do his part, which his part was to supply the funding, and that was all he had to do. Besides problems with the CJF summer camp, Graves and Dr. Collins say there are problems with CJF America and their paychecks. While they did get paychecks when they went to the bank, I was told that there was no money in that account. And that's where this becomes a huge criminal issue. So for Dr. Collins, she said she's owed $27,000. Ms. Graves says she's owed $10,000 for her work. We all have bills, and our credit has suffered and dropped. We don't get returned emails anymore from the Courtney Jordan Foundation or CJF America. No one is answering the phones or text messages. It's like they have all totally disappeared. Despite not getting paid, they continued working at CJF America, which I don't know what that says about them. But Dr. Collins adds, we continued working because we were under the understanding that this was a new project in this area. I've worked with startups before, so I know that sometimes there are kinks that need to be worked out when doing something new, but never have I not been paid to do that during that time. I was being patient because, of course, I was not thinking I was never going to get paid because there had been so much work that had already been put into it.
And I say that that is a mistake.
It is a mistake. And so ultimately, it ends up Kristen Peacock gets charged with simple, worthless checks. And that comes from Crystal Graves, who basically called the cops when her checks bounced. So according to what's being said here, she was due in September, on Tuesday, September 16th in court. She was a no-show. She was scheduled to appear on those charges, and she doesn't show up. Now, that's a big deal when you fail to appear. Further article by WTBD in September points out that Graves and the doc are not alone, says that former CJF camp counselors Brianna and Jasmine Thompson filed additional worthless check charges against Peacock for getting paychecks from CJF America they say could not be cashed. The Thompson sisters shared with Diane Wilson how much it affected their lives not getting paid. And they shared an email from the CFO and managing partner of CJF that says the foundation is preparing to distribute payments that would be sent via certified mail. The email goes on to state that in order to ensure no delays, CJF requested an address where someone was available to sign for delivery. They responded, but to date, no checks have arrived. So that court date is scheduled for later on. And this starts getting really messy, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, not that it wasn't messy before, but legally speaking, it gets a lot of attention.
Right. So there's a new article, September 29th, that pops up. It says, camp counselor for CJF America finally gets a paycheck as others wonder and wait. New details in an I-team investigation. After weeks of promises, at least one employee of CJF America got a new check for some of the money he says he's owed. That employee is Ethan McRae. He says, I was very shocked. I never thought I was going to see this money. It's money, Ethan says. He is owed for working for the Courtney Jordan Foundation. He got a check for $577, but says that CJF still owes him $1,300 for his work. This all started in June when McRae says the Courtney Jordan Foundation hired him to work as a camp counselor at their camp in Raleigh. After weeks of working, he got his first paycheck, but after cashing it, it bounced. He was not alone. As WTVD has reported, more than a dozen CJF employees had either received paychecks that bounced or in some cases claimed they never received payments. In August, Diane Wilson said she was working on getting employees paid. Weeks went by. Diane Wilson asked the president of CJF, who said she was working on getting the employees paid. Weeks went by, no checks arrived, but some camp counselors did receive an email from the CFO stating they were sending payments via certified mail. A few days ago, the mail lady comes up and was like, I need you to sign for this, and here's your money, according to Ethan McRae. So while that's going on, the Durham police have now issued active warrants in September for Courtney Jordan for felony obtaining property by false pretenses and felony conspiracy and related with fraud. And that's for Nicholas Gallardo and Courtney Jordan. These charges stem from the complaint where allegedly receiving a large amount of cash and documented payments from what was described as a, quote, investment fund. After the complainant determined the fund was not being operated as agreed upon, a request was made for the money to be returned. So Nicholas Gallardo sent this person a check, and that check bounced. As the investigation continued, investigators found the foundation was associated with similar false investment funds and unpaid obligations. Crystal Graves says, I feel like we're getting somewhere. I feel like there's hope. I just don't want this to happen to anyone else. And they remind us that Crystal Graves was responsible for organizing summer camp activities for nearly 100 kids a day. She said the foundation still owes her more than $10,000. At this time, it's emotional when you have people calling saying, well, what do I do to, I have to pay my bills. What do I do to hold them accountable? How are they able to do this? And Crystal Graves says this is the outcome they were hoping for. We're not expecting to get all of our money back, but we hope the judge holds them accountable to pay us back. There's a lawsuit that's been filed against CJF America and the executives. That's mentioned here. It's filed in Durham County. It's filed by 7 former employees who allege that CJF did not pay them. And I got news for everybody involved here. I don't think there's any money.
There was never any money. And one of the very first things to me in this situation that's a red flag. I mean, there's a lot of them. But on the back end here where they're saying, hey, we didn't get paid, pay us, right? Now, I do understand that, this summer camp was happening whether it was paid for or not after they had registered all these kids, right?
Right.
And so I do understand where the adults in the room with regard to that happening probably sacrificed quite a bit to make sure it went on, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's sad that happened. I mean, I'm glad they did it for the kids, but they aren't ever going to get the money. And one of the things that is insane to me is I think I don't know how many states it's a law in, but in North Carolina, like if they never paid them, you have to go through the civil process, right?
Correct.
To get, and unless there are some other kind of nuances with the Secretary of State that you can possibly do. But for the most part, if you don't pay somebody, it's a long drawn out civil matter. When you write a bad check and the check bounces, you have committed a crime.
Yes.
And that is a huge red flag that it seems like, especially Kristen Picot, who is the president of CJF. Now, she was charged. This is a situation, I believe the very first charge was the employee who received the bad check just went to the magistrate and
Correct.
said, hey, I got a bad check. And the magistrate issued an arrest warrant based on that. And it gets dealt with in court, but she didn't show up, right? Now, the reason she was able to be charged, I imagine, is because her name, like she signed the check, right?
That's what I'm guessing, yes.
That's my guess. But ultimately, with an attorney, that whole situation is even more complicated because I doubt her name was at the top left part of the check, right?
Yes.
But the very first thing at the end of all this that I would have noticed was these people are writing bad checks.
Correct.
And either they don't know they're bad checks because they don't have access to the accounts.
Right.
And they don't know what's in there. And they're just the messenger, so to speak. But the very last thing you want to do, if you were having, let's say, just a small hiccup, you don't want to be writing a whole bunch of bad checks because you're literally going to be charged for every one of them if somebody decides to take action, right? If you just hold off and, even if they, I need money. Well, if you don't have money, you can't get blood from a stone, right?
Yeah.
And it's not strategic to placate a situation so very temporarily by giving someone a rubber check. It's weird. It's the very first thing a strategic business person who has billions of dollars to put towards philanthropic causes, they would know not to do that.
Right. Well, so I started digging through the different articles that are popping up, and I found, so this is one of the more interesting parts of this. And, I only have a couple more things on this particular case, but I do want to talk about it because it's technically, I think it's ongoing. WRAL, which is another local news source, it's sort of a competing news source with WTBD or ABC 11. WRAL is more Raleigh and WTBD is more Durham. They put out an article back in August that said Durham not-profit accused of not paying employees used logos, testimonials that were not legitimate. This is run by an investigative reporter named Sarah Kruger, who does a pretty cool job on all of this. She says a Durham-based not-profit accused of owing its employees thousands of dollars is now facing new issues related to misrepresentations on its website. Because WRAL Investigates got involved, the city of Durham attorney's office took action, sending a demand letter to CJF America. So they point out here that there are tons of articles where WRAL and others have been investigating for weeks on the issues here. Sarah Kruger took notice of Duke Energy, Durham County, the city of Durham, and Duke University having prominently displayed logos on the CJF America's website. She also noticed testimonials that were claimed to be written by longtime state representative Mickey Michaud, former Durham Mayor Bill Bell, and former U.S. Senator Richard Burr. She contacted each person or entity, and all of them said they have no relationship with CJF America or Courtney Jordan that anyone knows of. The day after WRAL Investigates alerted the city to its logo's use on the website, emails obtained through a public records request show that Senior Deputy City Attorney Fred Lamar wrote to CJF America demanding it immediately remove the logo and cease any use of its association with their website. CJF America responded to Lamar saying it had removed all third-party logos from the website. It also claimed that the city's logo was on the site because of a prior partnership under our former brand and its flagship initiative, the Major Program Alliance, in the early 2010s. So you guys are aware, Courtney Jordan Foundation and Foundations of America, as far as North Carolina's Secretary of State records go, they were formed in 2023 and they were dissolved in 2024. We're now in 2025. So Sarah Kruger asked the city's public information officer if the city had ever had a partnership with something called the Major Program Alliance, and the response was that staff could find no evidence of that. When WRAL Investigates reached Bill Bell by phone to ask about his testimonial, he said, "I don't know that guy. I don't know where he got that from." Similarly, Mickey Michaud, he said that quote was not legitimate. An aide for Senator Burr said the senator and his staff could find no record or recollection of the quote that's attributed to him. And WRAL Investigates asked CJF America where it got the testimonial quotes from the three men. Executive Director of External Communications, Reagan Cartwright. Everybody's an executive director here, aren't they?
I don't know who like the workers are.
Yeah. She replied, "We're reviewing all testimonials to make sure everyone is properly attributed and can be fully verified. If a quote can't be confirmed, it will come down." As of Wednesday, those quotes remained on CGF's America's site. I couldn't find them when I looked tonight. Meanwhile, WRAL Investigates checked in with the CGF America employees who said they weren't paid. They tell us they're still waiting payment for their work. The North Carolina Department of Labor confirms that its investigation is ongoing. And I don't have a lot of faith that something is going to happen here where these people are going to be held accountable. But I have one more thing article-wise to bring up from October 2025. And this is the thing I think that Sarah Kruger found that they'll be held accountable. She put this out October 9th. It's Sarah Kruger again on WRAL's website. The headline is, "Man says he lost $200,000 to executives at center of WRAL investigation." The lead-in is WRAL Investigates has done more than a dozen stories on Durham-based CJF America and its executives who face accusations and in some cases criminal charges for allegedly not paying employees. Now WRAL Investigates is speaking with a man who says he gave the company's founder, Courtney Jordan, and chief financial officer, Nicholas Gallardo, roughly $200,000, and he fears that money is gone forever. The man is speaking on the condition of anonymity out of fear for his safety. He said he gave payments to the two men over the course of years, was told the money would be invested and grown. He then started seeing WRAL's story this summer and says he asked the men for his money back. He told WRAL Investigates he keeps getting the runaround and has not received a dime. "This has been devastating to me. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is probably the worst thing that's happened to me in my entire life. It has been devastating in every area imaginable. It's not just about losing the money. I don't want people to think it's about losing the money. They take your life because you have plans for progress with this money, things to do. People have medical bills and real life situations." The man described himself as being self-made, said he worked hard for going vacations to ensure he had enough money for retirement. He said, "I have nothing to show for the last few years of my life because of this mess. It's been very hard on me mentally. Some days it's hard to wake up." So he claims that Jordan was very convincing, made him feel comfortable, entrusting him with his money. This is the person at the center of some other criminal charges. Now, other people have come forward. WRAL Investigates spoke with another woman. She did not want to give a recorded interview, but she gave them in $30,000. She was told that her money would be invested and grown. If that's the case, they have a different problem, and I think this will be the downfall of it all. In total, 20 people have come forward, and I don't know if they're including employees, how they're doing all of this, but 20 people have come forward saying that Courtney Jordan owes them more than $500,000. So that part right there, the whole concept of like taking investment money and using it on this bullshit and lavish lifestyles, that is straight up fraud. And that will be the downfall of them.
Correct. And just, little business tip. In general, and this is so convoluted, it's really hard for me to follow the actual lines where things are connected because there's so many different things. But just this is just a general tip. A not-for-profit foundation focused on the community is typically not where you're going to invest. You would give a tax-deductible donation.
Right.
But a not-for-profit literally operates with no goal of a profitable return. So how are you going to get money back?
Look,
I'm just saying, in general, like I was pointing out the other red flags, like writing checks, you literally will go to jail for that. In North Carolina, at least. I think it's a misdemeanor, but I do think you can actually serve time, like a little bit anyway.
Well, you can get to the point that it becomes a felony, depending on. So
because it's the number, right?
It's the number, the intent. I mean, I don't know that it'll be
Picot or Picot, whatever her name is. I don't know that it'll be her. But
well, if she's not showing up for court, that's going to be another problem. But an attorney could probably argue that,
this is a civil matter between a foundation and these people, not
and
her.
she's not personally responsible, right? Now, the magistrate didn't seem to differentiate, but I mean, magistrates just issue the warrants. They don't. They don't have. They have a very low bar for probable cause, especially on a bad check, right?
Yeah, it is. You're right. So
Yeah.
But
all they have to do is go in and say, this person wrote me a bad check, and show them the check and
Right.
that it was returned, and they'll issue the warrant. But because the magistrate's like, well, this is supposed to be worked out in court. And in North Carolina, a bad check is a criminal matter.
Correct.
If you make it one.
Correct. Yeah. And this is, I apologize because you're right. It's very difficult to see all the through lines, and it sounds like I'm all over the place. It's not me that's all over the place.
No, I know.
It's this thing that they've done is all over the place. And I put it together best I could tell so far. Now that it's interesting because we're releasing this on Thanksgiving, we're recording it ahead of that, but there's still a strong possibility like we could have to come in and like explain something else. Now, these people could be like, they could have business elsewhere in the world that's making tons of money and it's just not U.S. money, and that's why I can't track it. But they are committing real offenses by not paying people in the U.S.
Well, right. And they took investments that I have a feeling they literally turned around and spent as their own money.
Yeah, that was their paycheck.
And again, I just can't emphasize this enough. You make donations to not-for-profits. They are not investment firms. They are not, like, I can't even believe, like, I do realize people who work hard for their paycheck and then just want to invest it, they may not be aware of that.
Right.
But, like, not-for-profits are never going to have any money to give back on an investment. Now, it may be that it's structured differently, and he was, like, using some other offshoot of his name, saying that it was some sort of investment firm. Those charges, though, they should, like, I feel like actually the FBI might get involved with that.
Well, that becomes, yes, because now we're to the point.
The SEC will be involved.
We get to the point that, like, things occur, like mail fraud, wire fraud, and that type of financial crime would garner a lot more attention.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And $200,000, I presume, especially with this reporter and sort of the background of all this here, I presume she probably saw proof of that, right? I mean, she's not just going off of this person's word, I don't think. But that's a lot, right?
Right.
And those kinds of transactions, I guess, depending on the circumstances, was there a timeline? Is it possible that, like, that $200,000 was, like,
funding all of this?
Well, maybe, like, placating some of these things, but then because, see, all too often, you've got a situation where you're getting investment funds and they're using this to live, right?
Yes.
And they're using it to live in a way that, like, says, I'm a billionaire, because they think somehow or another this is going to work out. And that's just never the case.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you what's going on here. I can tell you that everything I've seen related to all of the names of all of the people Courtney Jordan down so far, it's either completely fabricated or it's nefarious.
Well, he did supposedly. Now, I do think this is a self-made accolade. It does look like he had some sort of recognition for at least for possibly being part of or the developer of something called PicPack, which was a security feature for Microsoft Windows Phone. There has to be, like, a starting point typically, right? Where they might have done something small successfully, right? And so they were like, oh, I can just keep doing that, which, obviously perhaps he did develop something that Microsoft acquired, and then it got, flushed when Android and iOS became the two operating systems on most phones, right? Because I don't think Windows has a phone. I might be wrong. I don't know.
I'm looking for what you're talking about. I remember the Surface phones, but I would believe that there's some modicum of success with some of these people. I just will go ahead and say I don't believe that he is any kind of billionaire. And most of what I can find about him seems to have been carefully cultivated by him.
Well, and yeah, exactly, by him. And that's not real, right?
Right.
He supposedly, like, a source says that his net worth is $8 billion.
He is not worth $8 billion.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think that he even recognizes how ridiculous it is for him to say that.
Yeah, there would be there's a point somewhere that I could look at him and go, okay, he had a little something, but I'm not saying he started out with bad intentions or anything. I'm saying that there is definitely some BS going on where if he had this much money, he would have made it go away.
He would have made he would have been paying his bills.
He would have all of this stops when you simply pay your bills. He just strikes me as someone who was faking it till he made it and then didn't really know what he was doing. That's what he strikes me as.
Just to put this in perspective, because perhaps I don't want to sound like I'm being flippant about it. I haven't really looked this information up in a while. I have absolutely no use for it, just sort of on, nobody really has any use for this information unless you're looking at a page of a person who's saying they have $8 billion. When you're talking about billionaires globally in the planet we live on, right?
Correct.
People who are billionaires, there's a total of approximately 2,780 of them.
Yes.
Okay, total. And of that, it's 5% or something like that. That would be people who are getting up towards the 8, the 10, over 10 billion, right? And so that's 200 people, right?
Right.
We're talking about a group of two, and I bet there's a list somewhere. I'm just saying, but that much money being earned and then moving in any way, shape, or form shows up places.
Correct.
And I feel like faking it until you make it is not what Courtney Jordan has showcased. That is not what they're saying when I believe that fake it until you make it is a real thing, and it helps keep people starting out going, right? But this is not how you do that.
Right. And so I don't know what exactly is happening in this situation. I can only speak to the local attempt to take over this tiny town in North Carolina because that's documented. And they did not do well. You can look at all the financials of that if you dig deep enough online into each candidate. If they were, in my opinion, if they were making a real effort, there would have been a significant amount of election filings that you could follow the dollars on. And instead, they're very minuscule. And it really amounts to these four guys just kind of talking in public forums. They didn't put any money into advertising. There was no organization to their election or their filings. That is a situation you can get into serious trouble for tampering with elections. And I think they were trying to avoid it.
They were not good. And that was the weirdest thing to me.
All of this is weird. This whole thing is bizarre.
It is. And in my wildest dreams, if I were let me go burn it down, right?
Right.
Scorched earth on everything, I wouldn't go to this extreme.
No, it's like that's the other thing is, it's complicated to report on this because it's all BS.
Right. And so most recently, we caught wind of this. You caught wind of this because you're very familiar with at least the Raleigh area, which Durham is very close to. And it was interesting, right? Because it has a community impact. But then it's amazing. This is one of those real-time situations because at first you and I were like, ooh, because there were no charges, right? There was just this like crazy bits and pieces from basically the local investigative reporters, right? And we're reading it going, what the heck? And then I think that all the news articles included at least one link going somewhere.
Yes.
And that's how we end up at all of the various websites that I've never seen anything like it. If you are a person who has perhaps $200,000 to invest and they said, hey, check out my website, and you started clicking around and you perhaps were not sophisticated with the workings of business, you might be impressed, right?
Right.
And I can see where that could happen. If you actually know how things work or you're interested in that type of stuff, you start clicking and you realize you're going nowhere, right?
Yes.
And there is actually nothing that's substantiating everything that's being put out there. And then we start having a real problem, which, I mean, this is not necessarily uncommon, but on this scope and this like level, just the mass amount of it.
Yes.
I can't even figure out, unless you're just going, hey, I want to get caught faking it while I try to make it. I don't even understand why he was doing it. I imagine everything has a plan in his mind. I don't think the plan's ever going to work. I think that the only thing that he's trying to do at this point is probably fund his own life, and he's not successfully doing that. And, how do you come back from I'm worth $8 billion when you're not worth anything and your entire life is based on that lie?
I don't know how you do it. Obviously we're doing this as part of Fraudsgiving, Black Frauds Day, Scamsgiving. We're doing this because you and I like to tell stories that don't really fit into our regular feed on like the holiday times, because we can remember times when we didn't have anything else to do on those days. And like, that's been a thing that we kind of started 4 or 5 years ago, and we just do it. But weirdly with this one, I tried to do a much deeper dive on this, and I'm not going to say it's never going to come up again, because the truth is I have so much material that is difficult to fact check, which is why the sources that I named here, those are the sources we used, or things that you could find through the self-representations of CJF America, Sri Lanka, the foundation, etc.
And we're providing them so that our listeners can be the fact finders here.
Yeah, you can hunt through this one, and it's a fun rabbit hole if you have the time during these holiday seasons. It is so interesting. I have gone through the process of making lists of names and trying to contact people, which is unusual for the stories that we do at the holiday time. I don't normally go that far. I've come across multiple people online that I've now spoken with. I have exchanged messages with at least one person who said their opinion of all of this was that there was serious mental illness at play.
Oh, that's really sad.
And that like there was no one around to go, you should stop this.
Well, and you know what? I will say a lot of times young people starting out like early in their careers, they're offered one of these. I mean, everybody's like an executive here, right? And being offered a job like that with a big promise attached to it would be like flattering. And you'd be like, oh, I'm on my way, right? Not knowing the bigger picture, because I think it's possible, right? I don't think everybody looks at stuff like I do and go, well, none of that is going to lead to anything, right? Maybe. I don't know. I did want to point out, because we are talking about this, and I, I hate to even say it. However, just in case, I noticed that CJF America has still got like postings for vacant positions.
Correct.
And I just want to say, like, do not, for anybody looking for a job, if it is too good to be true, it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like that simply stated, like, I almost want to, like, I don't know, do something about that because nobody else should be subjected to this.
No, they should not. I am going to pull from a Courtney Jordan Facebook post from March 17th, 2025. I don't know why he posted this, but I'm going to say it here. He says, no human being had ever run a mile in under 4 minutes. It was thought to be the limit of human speed. Then one day, an Englishman did it in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. That was it. 6 weeks later, someone else did it, then another and another. Now a strong high schooler can do it. It's our inability to conceive those things that hold us back. That's something that he said on his personal Facebook page. And I will say sometimes it's laws. It's laws. It's like committing crimes against other people that holds us back, Courtney. I
don't know that would necessarily, I don't know that being required to pay somebody for work they've done is holding you back.
No, it's not holding you back. It's just a limitation on what you can functionally do. He has this whole thing he does online called Courthology. So it's like the study of Courtney Jordan. So if his goal was to make himself the subject of a very interesting rabbit hole that had no good ending, he has achieved his goal.
Yeah, this is not going. I hope if it is if it is related to a mental illness, I hope he gets help. I find it very hard to believe that he supposedly employs all these like highly educated, supposedly qualified people and nobody has given him like a check, a gut check, a whatever, a reality check, right? Nobody has done that for him. I don't know. It boggles my mind. I feel like, logically speaking, that it shouldn't have been allowed to get this out of hand. If we were a single source podcast, which we sort of started out as, I guess, not single source and that's all we look at, but like covering one thing, like I would get really deep into this. I just already know it's going to go nowhere. I mean, there is nothing here to prop any of this stuff up. And, I would say maybe actually during the time that we've had this podcast, so like, we're in season 6 now, I would say like there have been some really sort of desperate times happening with like the pandemic and like all kinds of stuff where people have wanted to have hope.
Yeah.
And this is a situation I feel like where somebody manipulated it and exploited it. And I'm not really sure why, because all you have to do is like nothing at all, right?
Yeah.
Why make promises to children? Why make promises to people like about one of their core needs, like housing? Why make promises to your employees and have them work really hard to accomplish something just to not pay them what you've promised? It is not uncommon for not-for-profits to work with a volunteer-based group of people where you're not paying them, right?
Yeah.
Why are you, I mean, obviously maybe you wouldn't get the quality of person that you needed, but why are you even making the promise to pay knowing that you can't? And then honestly, Kristen Picot, because she was the first arrest warrant issued I think in this situation, I wonder how much she knows what's going on, right? And I saw her, I don't know, she's on the leadership pages or whatever in various places. And I wonder how involved she is with the fraud side of it.
Well, she is listed as the producer on several of his, quote, hit songs. So I think she's involved.
Does she believe him, though?
I don't know. I mean, I find pictures of her going back through the years. I mean,
Hit songs. Oh my God.
the story itself is kind of over for today, but we're going to talk another minute or two about this. So I started hunting this community center that he allegedly opened in April 2024 under the name Cornerstone America. It's called the Mayfield Ragland Center. And I talked to multiple people that have been involved in that. And that was this big flop where it opens in April and it's gone by June. And it's, he is dangling hope at the end of a fishing reel, and
the carrot on a stick.
Yeah, and then he's taking it away. And there's this whole fundraiser out in California that appears to like have his name all over it. There are multiple different accusations of not paying their rent, and it is a wild disaster that just is sort of spiraling out of control. It fit perfectly into what we were doing related to Scamsgiving. It didn't fit into the podcast proper because I personally don't have like the bandwidth and investigative time to do the deep dive that's already being done by better reporters. But I'll be damned if I'm not sharing this story because it's fascinating to me when someone takes this kind of advantage of communities.
Well, but also it's not stopped yet.
It's not stopped, and it's not really gone super wide. And I keep wondering, is that because it happens so often that people do shit like this?
This is not something that is the scale that I imagine could possibly come out of this.
Right. Yeah.
Again, it's sort of, we just get this sort of soft shell on the outside, right? And so we don't have access, but I'm imagining there's absolutely nothing propping this up.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like, there is no money. All the money that was like given as an investment to a not-for-profit is gone because they spent it on themselves. And it is alarming that this scale was allowed to happen. Now, one website, one attempt, one person running for an office promising big changes that are never going to happen in the grand scheme of things. That, sure. I mean, I'm sure it could possibly happen all the time. But he's got to be like an excellent actor because he's had to talk a lot of people into a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And this scale of things, I think this could potentially, as far as the number of different outlets he used trying to generate whatever it is he's trying to do, like it could be worse than like Bernie Madoff. I don't think the amount is going to be more than Bernie Madoff, but like all these different things, because it just keeps going,
well,
right?
I think that has the potential to be more impactful. And I say that because Bernie Madoff figured it out. Like he figured out that as long as he was taking from rich people, it was difficult to tell what he was doing. I say that because he was taking, like, where his downfall was when he got greedy. When he got greedy and took like a third of someone's net worth, it was noticeable. Up until that point, taking $1 million from someone who had $30 million didn't get as noticed if you grew the money a little. They didn't ask as much about that. But like when he got greedy, it was his downfall. The problem is these communities notice $100. They notice $1,000, and they certainly notice $100,000.
Right, and the Chicken Hut has to get the $3,400 that they signed the contract for because they literally aren't going to be able to continue to operate without collecting invoices, right?
Right, and the same thing happens with like the people he owes rent to. There's a 2023 case where he owes $10,000 in rent. That was a smaller local company to, I think, Raleigh, North Carolina, where he had been running an office for a year and decided he didn't have to pay his rent.
And everybody's not a faceless corporation, in fact, I would say that that's like less and less often now, you're actually damaging situations. People who are like managing to do things where, I don't know, if you're in a tenant landlord situation and you run a business that way, you could be needing the rent to pay the mortgage, right?
Right.
And when it starts being backed up, that person's business is going to fail because you said you were going to pay the rent and you're not. And it's things like that. I don't think people like Courtney Jordan have any idea that like that's what happens. Do you think he knows?
No.
Or maybe he knows and he just doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
But see, also, every single bill that all of his workers had, when he's not paying them, when he's promised to pay them, those bills aren't getting paid.
Yeah.
And that has an impact on everything. And, you know, the economy is circular, right? And what is being put in is what is being paid out, and this and that and the other. And this type of thing, it's just never going to work. And I almost would dig further into it, but when you said, and I don't know why I didn't think of it, when you said there's probably mental illness involved, that's probably the answer. He may live in La La Land.
Yeah, no, I think he lives in La La Land. I mean, and I don't have a ton more on this, but the quotes that I read about like the amounts that were promised to what is known as the Ragfold Mayfield Center, which was this thing that I was talking about in Roxborough, North Carolina. It went on basically 2023, 2024, but like they were throwing out numbers like they were going to be investing $2.5 million and that they were personally pledging $50,000 towards, I think, a local basketball league. And they present this big ceremonial check and they're on the cover of all the local papers.
Did they ever get the money?
No, none of it. Not
and think about the impact on, you know, the kids, or I don't know who it was, the team, right?
Right.
They don't get to do that.
Well, the one thing that stood out to me there was a registration for a Courtney Jordan group with the North Carolina Secretary of State's office from July 2011, but it was suspended as a nonprofit organization in October 2017. And I think it said that the Courtney Jordan group had been suspending for failing to comply with the North Carolina General Statute. I'm not going to get the numbers right, but I think it's in 105, which is if a corporation or a limited liability company fails to file a report or return or pay a tax or fee, the secretary shall inform the Secretary of State of this failure, and they will suspend their articles of incorporation or whatever organizational body they have. So all of these things are like briefly registered through, like, it looks to me like they're being registered through those like websites where you can quote start a company today for just $100, and then like they go away and then they come back when they get their shit together. There's this whole thing about Cornerstone Scholars Academy that they were running that doesn't appear to be real. It's a lot. It's like you said, like the more you look, the more websites you see, the more tentacles this fraudulent thing has.
It's incredible to me because none of this was necessary if you legitimately don't have any money, which is just right off the cuff what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
With the way everything's set up, you would think somebody that's building this type of legacy, they would never allow a situation to occur where they're getting bad publicity for not paying their employees, for ripping off investors. Like, that's just, if you had the money, you would not be wanting that, just like you said earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything else on this right now. I just thought it was an interesting story, and I have.
I do kind of plan on following it a little bit if there's like more charges and stuff. I don't know what's going to happen,
Yeah,
but if it ends up being a bigger case, I totally would cover it more.
This type of sprawling like financial thing is very difficult for me. Like it takes the truth is investigating something like this sucks up another tremendous amount of resources, and it's very difficult to do because there's so much paperwork and there's so many interviews that you have to do to get these little nuggets of information that then send you down another big rabbit hole. Because every time I've searched for something on this or talked to someone about this, it just opens up another like bottomless
It's
pit.
a lot. It's like a can of snakes.
It is a can of snakes.
And I don't know. I find, I've said on the show before that I do feel like a lot of financial crime cases are waste of time. And it's almost like the universe was like, well, really? Because look at this. Because I don't think this is a waste of time. We do have laws in this country against certain things. And just to be clear, like when it's just nameless entities, like mostly the government, I feel like that's a waste. But in this case, I hope every single person that lost something because of whatever's happening here with all this garbage, I hope they all get justice that they deserve. And, hopefully they take it forward with them like a lesson learned, and they, maybe share it, which it seems like they're doing.
Right. And, it's giving time of year. So I hope that the universe does something amazing for everybody affected by this nonsense.
Me too.
Special consideration was given to True Crime Excess by LabrottieCreations.com. If you have a moment in your favorite app, please go on and give us a review or a 5-star rating. It helps us get noticed in the crowd. This is True Crime XS.
You fall like the stars. I break things like guitars. Thick skin, no scars. We're in trouble, we took it too far. I don't want to go, but it's 'cause I'll disappoint ya. It's all I've ever dreamed of, something I cannot let go of. I hate the competition, this culture's like a gym, and I lost the motivation to get fit in your expectations.
True Crime Excess is brought to you by John and Meg. It's written, produced, edited, and posted by John and Meg. You can always support True Crime Excess through Patreon.com, or if you have a story you'd like them to cover, you can reach them at TrueCrimeAccess.com. Thank you for joining us.